Thanks for checking out the Locked On NFL podcast on YouTube. Subscribe for great daily content, and it's happening this week. The Underwear Olympics, the the NFL Scouting Combine going down in Indianapolis. It was a little touch and go there, but it is going to go down in Indy. 324 draft prospects invited to work out. 40-yard dash, bench press, vertical jumps, broad jumps, three-cone drill, 20-yard shuttle, 60-yard shuttle. Eric Crocker, Locked On NFL Draft. He's locked in on this, along with his co-host Ryan Tracy. And Eric, three top prospects vying for the top spot in the 2022 NFL Draft. Pass rushers Kayvon Thibedeaux, Aiden Hutchinson, Bama tackle Evan Neal. What's their status this week, and how can one of them kind of separate themselves from the pack as that top pick?
I think, obviously the status of those guys, we probably won't know until the next day or so, if they're going to do on-field drills, things like that. But I think as far as kind of separating themselves, I think a couple of things there. One, two guys can really help themselves, and it's Aiden Hutchinson and Evan Neal. Now, Neal just showing that he is that kind of franchise-changing tackle, because you have a team like the Jacksonville Jaguars at the top of the draft who, they've taken Josh Allen over the last couple years at the edge rushing position, and he's been solid. They also have a guy like Chase Young, who isn't maybe a pure edge rusher, but can kind of be used in that role. Would they go edge to maybe have a booking guy? Maybe, but if I'm them, I want to protect my franchise quarterback with a franchise-changing tackle, and I think a guy like Evan Neal can really separate himself from the rest of the pack if he goes out there and he just shows, hey, I'm an athletic freak. Obviously, the size there is going to measure in around at least 6'7". I think he's listed at 6'8". 350 plus pounds. So if he can show that he has elite movement ability as well, I think he's a guy that can really maybe solidify himself as a top guy in the draft. Aside from that, when you look at Aiden Hutchinson or even Kayvon Thibedeaux, for Hutchinson, I think he can really change some things by maybe going out there and testing better than what people think. I think right now he's kind of pegged as a guy that does a lot of things very well, but works more off of his motor. If he can go out there and put some terrific testing numbers together and really show like, hey, this is why I'm the guy, even if it's not a great 40-yard dash, but maybe like what we saw from Nick Bosa a couple years back, terrific 10-yard split, those type of things, I think that can solidify him as a top 3, top 4, top 5 pick as well.
A lot of people down on this quarterback class. You mentioned the signal callers there, but everybody always wants to talk about the QBs. Do we expect Malik Willis to kind of continue to parlay his strong performance at the Senior Bowl in that week, the quarterback from Liberty, or to continue his rise, or which quarterback has the most to prove this week?
I think one guy that probably rose the most during Super Bowl week was the guy that wasn't there, Matt Corral. And obviously he's coming off of an injury, ankle injury. Doesn't seem like anything too crazy, maybe a high ankle sprain. I think him coming in there, if he can crush some of the, the interview process and then just show up, he might not be as physically imposing as some of the other guys as far as height, weight, things like that. But he has dynamic ability. He can let it rip. And if he just shows while being on the same field as those guys that he can, throw with the best of them and also have that athletic ability that he has to add to his game, and didn't get to see any ugly moments at the Senior Bowl, I think that's something that can really help him. And I think if there is a guy right now that you feel maybe the most comfortable picking in the top 10, it might be him, just because of some of the unknown with seeing him in person.
I think back to the 2019 draft process, the wide receivers in that class, why people passed on DK Metcalf. He had a lot to prove in that combine, and he dazzled people, had an incredible combine performance. So did N'Keal Harry, who's had, the opposite career of DK Metcalf. But both of those guys wowed everybody with their speed, with their strength. Which position group could probably have some guys to wow us the most? Who's going to just kind of show up and show out in Indy this week?
I think, a lot of the times when it comes to just the wow aspect of it, it's, the 40-yard dash, how someone tests. And a lot of times that's coming from the cornerbacks or the receivers. And when you look at the receiver position, there are a couple guys who I think can really help their stock. One guy, Treylon Burks out of Arkansas. People are split. Is he the wide receiver 1 in this class? Or some people might not even have him as a first-round pick because they think, he can't separate. Well, I know what he does win. He wins vertically, and he wins very well vertically, and he can outrun defenses. If a guy like him measures in around 6'3", which he was listed at 6'3", 230 pounds. If you can measure in at around 6'3" or 6'2" and a half and be around 225, 228 and run a blazing 40-yard dash, which is possible. There's some people that think he might test in the 4.3s. If he does that, I think that'll be the wow moment of this class. And, there are people that have questions about his separation ability, but at the receiver position, it's more so about how do you win? And we've seen a guy like Jamar Chase come out and have a lot of success as a rookie in the NFL, not being the pure route running, separating type guy, but still showing that explosive ability. I think a guy like Treylon Burks, he can really help himself. And then maybe on the other side of things at the cornerback position, guys that, we haven't really seen a whole lot of Derek Stingley Jr., guy who excelled as a rookie, was lights out as a freshman at LSU. Haven't seen much of him since then, in and out of the lineup, different injuries, things like that. They gave him the number 7. And, if you get that number 7 at LSU, he started off wearing number 24, switched to number 7, that you're the guy. But he didn't even really play the whole year. Had injuries, ended up opting out for the rest of the year. So, how does he test? And does he help himself? Because I think right now he's living off a lot of what he did as a freshman. Can he go out there? Can he look smooth? Can he be explosive? Can he test extremely well? If he does, I think that'll really kind of be the wow moment because people are expecting a lot from him.
Yeah, I mean, think about that number 7, Tyrann Mathieu, Patrick Peterson, Tre'Davious White. I mean, who's who of NFL corners wore that number 7, and he's got a lot to kind of back up. Absolutely right. It's a mock draft Monday on the Locked On NFL Draft with Eric Crocker and Ryan Tracy. I got to ask you, maybe have the audience wanting more here, but did you guys have a quarterback in the top 10 this week?
We did have one guy that went in the top 10. And again, it was kind of hard trying to decipher. You talked about Malik Willis, some of his abilities. I think a lot of maybe some of the inconsistencies in his game, but he has the high upside. Is the team going to maybe bank on that? We had to decide with that. Kenny Pickett, he feels like a top 10 guy. They're saying he has small hands. Can he potentially be a top 10 guy? And even some of these other guys that might creep up late, or a Matt Corral. So we do have one guy, but I'm going to let everyone kind of listen in and see who that guy is for us.
Absolutely. Wherever you find podcasts, free across all platforms, the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast with Eric Crocker. Of course, follow him on Twitter at Eric_Crocker, Big Crocky, and of course, Ryan Tracy. And they're on YouTube. Subscribe to the Locked On NFL Draft channel for great content coming your way all week long as the combine goes down. And of course, Mock Draft Monday. Which quarterback snuck his way into the top 10 this week for Eric and Ryan? Eric, always great to catch up with you, man. Enjoy the combine.
All right. Yes, sir. Thanks for having me on.
Great stuff from Crocky there, and always excited about the NFL scouting combine. Always great action from Indianapolis. And you know what? If you want even more action football season, it might be in the rearview mirror, but college basketball, pro basketball, they're gearing up for the respective postseasons. Get in on that action from the latest odds, totals, player performance props, where the next fired coach may land. BetOnline.net is the number one spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcast news this season, and it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your number one source for hockey, boxing, UFC. Head to the website today or use your cell phone, your mobile device. Learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts.